We already hit you up for some donations for the three. We're not accepting any cash, any of us. It's just all going to, if we made a donation, it's all going to the 3-year retreat that our holy lamas are in. But then also, the 3 jewels is run purely by volunteer efforts and by donators. So if you have any desire to help that, we're gonna, maybe not right now, we're gonna have this envelope here, and we'll put it back on the food table, and you can put something in it when you leave if you feel like it. Okay. Okay. So the verse that I wanted to talk about is, if you look on your handout, it's a very famous verse. It's from the 4th chapter. It's like verse 13 and 14. It says, "How could you ever find enough leather to cover the entire surface of earth? Covering simply the soles of your feet is comparable to the entire surface. Just the same, it would be an impossibility for me to stop every single outer object. Rather, I should stop this tendency of my own mind. Why should I stop all the others?" So Master Shantideva is telling us that the method that we're trying right now in our world is like trying to stop every single object that might cause us pain. It's like trying to move around things that have already ripened. And he's saying, obviously that method doesn't work. You know, you can even use your logic and prove it to yourself. Like, say, you're in your apartment and you hear, you know, the people below start to turn their music up really loud. And so if you're using this outer method of trying to just move things around in your outer world, you'd go downstairs and you'd bang on the door and you'd say, "Turn your music down." Right? And does that work? Sometimes. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they turn the music off. Sometimes they turn it louder. Sometimes they don't answer the door. Right? So if you were using your logical Buddhist mind, you would look at it and you would say, and this is another verse by Master Shantideva, that the cause of something is designated to be a cause when it brings about the same result every single time. You know, and this is scientific worldview as well. Something is designated to be a cause if it obtains the exact result each time it's implemented. Right? So if banging and knocking on the door is the thing, then it should work every time. And it doesn't. So that's proof that that's not the cause of getting what you want. And if you use that wisdom, then you would know that the real way to get the things that you want is to work on another level. Right? And it's not to say that you stop doing things in your outer world, but you do, everything you do is imbued with this wisdom that there's something deeper going on there, that you need to work on the seed level, the karmic level. Right? And the test is, you know, it's like if whatever method we're using is working, we should be getting less mental afflictions. We should be getting less mental suffering. And if that's not happening, then you have to look a little further and see what else you could be doing on the foundation level. Right? And Master Shantideva in this verse is kind of saying to us that everything is mental. You know, that everything, your whole world can change if you just change the mind. And it doesn't matter what your practice looks like. If you haven't worked with the foundation, then the results don't come. It's like a person can meditate for 4 hours and be in a complete place of shamatha, single-pointed mind. But then, you know, when they're out of meditation, are they still getting angry? You know, if they're still getting angry, then all their work is for nothing. It doesn't matter. You know, they'll still die, they'll still get old, they'll still get sick. You know, so what the practice is going into our own mind and every single day using the mind and using it like a laboratory. So for us, it's like at this point we've kind of heard these teachings, you know, but it might even be the case that you're practicing, maybe even you're practicing the 6 perfections, but you're still doing it without having really substantially changed at the wisdom level. You know, it still hasn't gotten very deep, the wisdom level. And one example is like, you know, we've heard, has everybody heard Geshe Michael talk? A lot of us have. So he talks often about how if you want to create wealth, then you have to give money, right? You have to give away wealth in order to see it. So if you hear Geshe Michael talk, he's very inspiring, you know. So you can get this kind of like, oh wow, this fuel, and then you set off and you decide like, all right, I'm going to give away my change or whatever I can to every single person who asks for it, right? And so this is like me. I'm just like, all right, if it's true, then I'm just going to try it and see what happens. And so, for example, I go to school on 14th Street and 8th Avenue, and there's always this like group of people there that ask for money, and they kind of live on the street there. And I was on my way to get food from a deli across the street, and I was crossing the street, and this guy was like, oh, could you help me out? I'm really hungry. Could you get me a meal? And then I was like, all right, let's go. So then we both go into this deli together, and it's like a Korean deli that has like this big spread of all kinds of steaming foods. And he's like, he gets this really big container, and immediately I'm like, oh. And he's also like 300 pounds, and he has to use a cane because he's so fat. So he starts to take heaping spoons of like mac and cheese and really heavy food, you know, mashed potatoes and like the heaviest food that's out there. And I was like, and then he brings it to the scale, and it's like $15.95. And I'm like, oh my god! And all in my mind, I'm just like, I have $216 in my checking account right now. And, you know, Francis is also likes to eat a lot. So all these thoughts are going through my mind, and it's like I think I'm practicing the perfection of giving, but at the same time, there's these opposing worldviews going on. You know, it's like my action is imbued with doubt and fear. And so where's the wisdom? You know, and the idea is whatever motivation is there, whatever worldview is the strongest is the one that's going to create the noticeable result. You know, so if in somewhere in the back of my mind I'm thinking I'm practicing wisdom and I want to create wealth, at the same time I'm having all these fixed ideas about who I am. I'm this ordinary person who's broke. I'm giving money to this just money, food, to this ordinary other person. You know, and that doesn't create very much in and of itself. Even if I didn't have the doubt and the fear there, just having this like self-existent view of myself, of the action that I'm doing, and of the person that I'm giving it to, it's going to create a result that I'm not even going to see in this lifetime, to be quite honest. You know, so if I'm gonna go about practicing the 6 perfections that way, what are the 6 perfections? Giving. Patience is the third one. Ethics. So morality. Patience. Joyful effort. Concentration. Wisdom. And they're like a feedback loop, right? You practice them and they kind of feed on each other. And you really practice wisdom, you go back and the perfections are even better. So if I'm really going to be practicing the 6 perfections and I'm going to spend my day doing it, I better be doing it with the right motivation and a strong worldview. Or else I'm going to get to a place where I feel like that yoga practitioner, where I'm just straining and I'm just trying my best, but I'm not seeing any changes. You know, and maybe at that point I'll lose faith and I'll go back to something that used to make me happy, or I thought used to make me happy instead. You know? And I know that everybody, like in their path, kind of reaches that point of doubt, and then at a certain point something pushes them up beyond it, and then they kind of redouble their efforts again in their practice. But when they hit that point of doubt, it's because of that. It's because they're doing these virtuous activities with the wrong worldview. So the idea is like, I kind of want to talk about karma and emptiness in a more scientific way. It's like, just thinking about just the brain. I'm taking this class from this lady who's a hypnotherapist. I think she's really amazing because she talks about emptiness and she talks about karma, but she doesn't use those terms at all. And it really speaks to us as Westerners. Because we're not hearing it with like Judeo-Christian ears and criticizing the idea of karma and kind of, having all these other thoughts in mind. You kind of can understand it in a concrete way. So the way she talks about it is she's saying, every single atom of this flower is made up of 90% space. So this is totally an illusion. What you're seeing here is completely an illusion. Everything looks like a container of something, but it's not really there the way you think it is. Things are not the way that they seem. Things are not the way that they're appearing to your mind. And we're so convinced that the way we're seeing something is the only way that it exists. But actually, as we look out into the room, the brain is not able to take in all of this. Your mind is filling in gaps right now. Your mind is painting what it thinks should be there. And even science agrees with that. So that proves to us that things are not out there in a fixed way. These things are coming from us and not at us, like Roshin said. So the brain is interesting because it's like everything is habit. Everything, karma is habit. And everything that we do on a daily basis is creating these little neural pathways in the brain. So like if you look at somebody who has like a panic attacks, for example, they have this like dense area of their brain. It's like called specialization. So they have this dense patch in their brain that's just for their panic attacks. And they get into the beginnings of a panic attack and they say to themselves, I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out. Oh my God, I'm gonna faint. Oh my God, my heartbeat. And they work themselves into a panic attack. And it's this little patch in their brain that's like, they've made it strong, and it became like the bully on the block. Like highly sensitive and really dominant. And when like this hypnotherapist lady, she's working with somebody who has a panic attack, she just tries to teach them how to make little pathways away from that little dense patch. So while they're in a panic attack, they could even just like start tapping on their hand, so that there's just one little new path that goes to another part of the brain. And they teach themselves other little methods to do, just so there's like new networks going on. And that's really all that we're talking about with creating a strong worldview. There's this really strong part of our brain that tells us that we're ordinary. Just look at when you say your name to yourself. Just, for a second, you just say your name to yourself. All these different stories come up. And it's like coming from things people have told you about yourself. Experiences that you had in the past, failures, all these different limitations that you have, ideas that you have about what you can do and what you can't do. And it's like this strong patch in your brain, and it's if you have a sense of yourself like that, how can you ever create any powerful karma? Can you ever create a world that's different than that? If you see yourself as ordinary, your world is definitely going to be ordinary. So the whole practice of trying to, like Eve came up with this, unlock the extraordinary, right? She's like the queen of branding. If you're really trying to do that in your life, it starts with you. You have to really look at what's going on in your little dense patch, and say like, okay, what tricks can I use to tell myself a different story? no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm. So, this is great, first of all. It's very helpful. Like when you're talking about the panic attacks, like I feel you can transfer that sort of thing, like okay, to start tapping to like change your focus for also anything. Like if you like, I get angry easily, so I could also kind of do something like that. But I'm always curious to know like what other little tricks like that. Like I don't know if you know if your teacher shared with you like other things that they do. Can you share?
She did. Let me think. I mean, this is why mantras are so powerful. You can come up with a mantra that you say to yourself. If it's like that you think you're a depressed, sad person or an angry person, it means that you're actually identifying that label as you. So you need some sort of trick to pull you away so that you can watch the mental affliction and not grab onto it and call it me. So come up with something that you can say to yourself, like, oh, there's anger again. So even just subtly in your mind, that language, put the anger outside of you and separated it from you. Something like that. Like, you need to make it personal. Come up with something that you can, some sort of like sweet mantra that you can say. Whatever the trick might be. You can even use breathing exercises. I don't know. Think about it. So I was thinking about this also in terms of relationships. Like, probably every single one of us has had nice relationships. It started out nice and really sweet, and I thought, this is the one. And the other person was just this magical person, and slowly, maybe if you're like me, you see negative things and you elaborate on them. You just keep telling stories over and over about that. That's the funny thing about the mind. The mind is really good at repeating. This is why you get a song stuck in your head. I get a song stuck in my head for like 2 weeks. It's so annoying. And just the mind, it's not a bad or a good thing. The mind, if you can turn it around to be a good thing, the mind just does that. So you have stories in your mind about the person that you're with, and you elaborate on them, and you have this negative list. And if you focus on the negative list, it becomes that like patch in your mind, and then it takes over the whole relationship becomes just you focusing on it. Eventually the negative list is all you see. The good things don't seem as charming anymore because the negative things took over. And then at a certain point you decide it was better without this person. It would be better without this person because you have this whole list. And it's like, never was about that person at all. And the proof is because at one point you saw that person as magical and charming and all these other things. And it wasn't because they changed. They are not one way or another. Like when you get angry at somebody, you play the film in your mind about why you're angry over and over and over again. And you're convinced that like you even are feeling angry for this length of time. Like, I've been angry for the last week. If you break it down, you can see like, well, when you were going to the bathroom, you weren't angry, right? You were thinking like about going to the bathroom, and you can break everything down that way. You can see nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent, everything is changing moment to moment, actually. Same, you're changing moment to moment. You are not, say your name to yourself. That person doesn't even exist, actually. It's a like huge layer upon layer of stories.
fun little things on that. Like my sister and I have this great relationship. This is like kind of embarrassing, but we started this thing. I don't remember which one of us started it, where we would just text each other like love bombs. And at first it was just like love bomb and like lots of hearts and stuff, please it and send it. And it was just like kind of silly and like, but like sometimes I would just get like, I'd get one from her like when I was having like a really terrible day. And it was like, you just, I don't know, it was so weird. I just feel like so loved. And so then, like now they're ridiculous. Now it's like, stop whatever you're doing. Feel how much I love you. Like right now, you're like the most amazing. Like now they're super elaborate, right? Greatest sister on the whole planet. No one else has a sister like you. And they're like, I've actually started keeping them because she's a writer, so hers are like really like great. And it's just like it's awesome, and like, or else in her ones where I'm like, this love bomb, like total destruction, like you can't escape this one, like. So it's like it's really like silly and like, but it like builds, like it builds, and it's like a really small thing, but it's become like this great little thing that her and I have. And
so maybe we can like find a love bomb buddy here in the room. Make a commitment. Jamie, you're my love bomb buddy. She already is. Just come and say I love you. So, Master Shantideva is reminding us that it starts in the mind because every single thing has infinite possibilities. Like every single object here is available to be something different, and Miriam kind of was telling us about that. And like the highest kind of practice you can do, which is to transform something that could be totally mundane, and because everything can do anything, you can use it that way. Like you can take a shower and you can think like, may this wash away all my impurities so that I can be everything to all beings. And just that one little thought, so powerful. It's such a high practice. And then you're not just wasting water, right? Like I love long hot showers. How much am I swiping my karmic credit card when I take those long showers, right? And you can always reinforce wisdom in your mind by, when you make those dedications, you start them by saying, by the power of my understanding that things are coming from me. Every time you say that to yourself, by the power of my understanding, you're creating this view of yourself as a powerful being who understands, the real nature of things, how things really exist. If you see yourself that way, you become a very powerful kind of person, right? And like Miriam said, we're operating in a world where it's like everything else is telling us otherwise. It's very hard to be a woman in New York City because we keep getting all these images about just superficial things, like we're only valuable if we look a certain way, if we have these things, right? So we have to work even harder. You have to swim upstream, and you have to have these tools every single day, implement them in your daily practice every single day. Otherwise, it just gets like, you just start to want to be like in the raft and just go back downstream. And that happens a lot in our practice too. Sometimes we just go back, and then we have to go back again. There's this, she just left, but she was talking about the anger thing, and we were talking about, I wish I had brought it up while she was here, about, methods to use to stop the mental afflictions. It's like, it reminds me now of the story of Milarepa. Milarepa, the great yogi. He was in a cave doing this practice in deep retreat, and he saw this ogress. This ogress came to his cave, and she was in there, and he said, "Get out of here, ogress." And she said, "Oh, you're Milarepa. You know, you are this great, aren't you this great yogi, Milarepa? You know, how can you talk like that to me?" You know, and then he just like was overcome by a realization that, you know, she wasn't what she looked like, and he fell to her feet and was just like, "Oh, Marpa, my teacher, my holy teacher." You know, and then so Milarepa is telling us that, like, if you see a demon as a demon, it will hurt you. But if you see a demon as coming from your mind, then it will free you. But if you see a demon as empty and you transform it into your teacher, then, you know, all possibilities are there. So like that, like anger could, for this person, could be something that's just debilitating. In the end, you know, with her practice, anger could be the thing that frees her. Anger could be the thing that transforms her whole world, you know. So even your thoughts are your teacher, right? Like they talk about Dakini, right? Like holy angel dancer in the sky, all, you know, this female Dakini, and it's like the thoughts dancing in the sky of your mind, right? Your thoughts are her too. So like that, everything can be used in your practice. And then, when you get to a level, and I'm not there yet, where you have put the teachings of wisdom in your heart. So it takes a lot of study, hearing the wisdom teachings, going over the proofs of emptiness, that things can't exist the way we think they are. Understanding that cause and effect relationships that we believe in could never possibly exist. You know, that nothing does anything outside of our deeds. After having studied that and proven it to ourselves in deep states of meditation, we get to a level where the teachings are in our heart. The teacher is in our heart all the time, even when we're sitting on the toilet. There are no breaks, you know. And then when that happens, then when the obstacles come, we're not bamboozled anymore. You know, we're not fooled anymore. And it becomes like this like free place where you realize that you are totally infinite. You know? So that's really like the point of why we got together, is to kind of like try to plant this seed in each one of us here, to maybe one day believe that we're not this like limited small person that we've seen our entire life, that in fact everything is totally possible. My future is totally bright. So I think that's it. It's 9 o'clock. We're actually ending on time. If you guys want to have any questions? Or should we just end there?
So back to the moment when whatever your bad seed ripens or whatever, and then from what I understand, I don't know, the thing is out here and I don't like it, and then I react to the thing out there in a not good way. But you were talking earlier, so you've been talking about anger. So say that anger comes up, and it sounded like what you were saying, there's a window of time where you have the power to do something about it before the anger takes over you. And then I guess back to her question and then other things, like in that window,
or before, how do you react to it differently, or how do you know what what to do in your window of opportunity before, like, or with the ice cream, like once you're eating ice cream, you're done, you're in it. But like, how do I identify the moment where I have some power, and then what do I do in that time? Is that clear, my question?
Well, I don't know. We were actually talking about this during the break. Do you want to answer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple
This
things.
is Sherry. She's going to teach
Oh
us.
yeah, sorry.
Just a couple things come to mind. First is being able to step back. Geshe Michael talks a lot about learning to watch alone. So there's this viewer mode. It's hard to do that in the moment, and sometimes I learn from experience of making a mistake. You know, that this is the feeling that I have to address. So first in meditation, you can practice kind of watching yourself, like, how am I feeling right now, you know, and learning to step back from that a little bit. So that's a practice that would happen on a daily basis, and then you might get better at doing it in the moment what's actually happening. So allowing yourself to practice it in meditation, and then when it's actually happening.
When you're talking about patience, right?
Yeah, and then learning what sets you off. Like, get really good at learning. I mean, obviously some of those circumstances are going to come up that kind of catch you off guard, but I definitely know what sets me off, you know, and so if you learn to prevent those, and prevent it, like for me it's being spread too thin, like overcommitting myself, you know, and not feeling like I have time for myself. And then learning to say no, and doing it as a dedication to reaching the enlightenment, and not just for me, but for everybody. So doing it with wisdom. So those are, you know, and then, like I said, sometimes things will come up that you didn't expect, like, oh, I didn't think I was going to get angry at that, but that, I'm not sure. I think it's like practicing in meditation, and then you get really good, hopefully, at catching yourself before you go off. Those are some ideas. I don't know.
I just want to add that, because is that as this, when you're in the moment of doing something that potentially can harm you, or you deem it this way, that you just hope, like, you just say in that space before you dive, may I feel all of this for every person in this room. May nobody feel as angry as I do right now. May, like, I absorb all of this for everybody. May, you know, so you kind of, so another way of using your time, being angry, well. And I also have been trying to be just more aware and kind of protect myself a bit, like knowing that certain things are gonna set me off. And so as I was talking about preparation, knowing that I have a tendency for certain things to arise, and then I'm very deliberate about applying the causes for me to handle them better in the moment. And the third thing is I've observed that what it enables me to think of others at that moment is when I attach myself to the experience. Like, I can't think of anybody except for Miriam when I am like I'm getting angry and I can't stop, and it's all about me getting angry, and it's like you know, it's very hard to distance yourself once you have automatically labeled yourself the person that's getting angry right now, and that really sucks, and this is a bad seed, because then you're a goner. So I related to this to, as I said, I'm a dancer and I think of things physically a lot. And I realized that I was, every time I would get angry because I was trying to be a good Buddhist, I was like nipping it in the bud. I was like, shh. And it was like I didn't, I was closing it, and it became this kind of, and it was all holding in my pelvis. Ha ha ha. And so I decided, I'm going to open up this door, and I want to see what's in there, because I actually want to be able to sit in meditation, and it's hurting me, so I need to deal with my pelvis, which led me to dealing with anger, and for me, more fear. And what ended up helping me, my normal Miriam would be like, I really need to focus on my pelvis, and this would be like everything. It would be like, my pelvis sucks and I need to work on it. Like I really need to work on my anger, and it's like, you become like, that's not helping things. So I tried to use I'm very flexible in my upper back, so I said, okay, why don't you use some of that good energy there to let it flow and like be nice to it, like, oh, you're so angry and you're really cantankerous. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, and instead of approaching the anger that way, or that you're not identifying with it, and so it's not bringing you down. I think it's what Holy Nancy was saying, is that you want to kind of step back, and in that moment of stepping back, you acknowledge that that is not you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and so you try to let go of your grip on that story, and you do whatever it needs. You're angry? Okay, let's talk about it. I'm hearing, you want to yell at me. Like, or, like you let go, and you kind of like, by letting go in a physical way, you let go, and then the blood can move, and it can just move, and it goes away. Just like, oh, look, I'm a crazy person. I'm getting my period. And you're like, oh, I'm gonna act crazy, and that's okay. And because I'm not a crazy person, I'm just acting crazy, which is so funny. And you just let it flow, So that's something that I think, because we are lucky enough to get such a wide experience of that moment. But I don't know, I just think that the biggest thing is not identifying yourself with what you're feeling. I think that's really like that chance is to just be like, oh, look at that. I must have, hurt somebody in the past, and that's why this is happening, and I'm angry, and I'm fully in anger, or I'm fully craving something that makes me feel safe, like ice cream. I must have abandoned somebody, and I wasn't there for other people. So you try to make home for others, make them feel safe. But at the moment, you just, you just try not to. I don't know. That's fine.
I just want to say, one time I heard the Dalai Lama talk, and he was like, oh, I think New Yorkers can get enlightened quickly. And he was talking about how, because there are so many people offering your practice of the six perfections. Like, it's not like you're going to be coasting through your life and then one day you have attained the six perfections because the six perfections fairy hit you on the head. Every single person who got there worked really hard. The Buddha worked for, what did it say, like 3 countless kalpas or something? Eons? And it's like, you just have to realize that. That's why I said the thing that got you angry could be the very thing that got you enlightened, because it's an opportunity for you to develop that in yourself. You wouldn't otherwise get it. Venerable Punsak prayed and prayed for an irritating person to come into his life because he didn't have any. He didn't have any. And then, some of us know this person became one of his closest students, and super irritated. And then he was like, yes! And he took him on as one of his closest students. So like a real They say a real practitioner will see an irritating person as a wish-fulfilling jewel. Like that. So you can use anything, you can turn anything, because nothing is anything in and of itself.
So I struggle with anger too, and I find that the thing that helps me make the most progress on any of the changes I'm trying to make in myself, and I definitely made a lot of progress on anger, is for me, because I'm a writer, writing every night, which I find helps me to be mindful about things all through the day. And I like to think of it as like body, speech, and mind, because you're thinking, so you have to calm the mind, you're acting through writing, so it's body, and then you're speaking through your words. And so I just find that if I write about something every night, like I actually did this to help me quit smoking if I really wanted a cigarette. I just wrote every night about how I didn't want to smoke and why. And if you read my journal, it would look like a third grader. I mean, it would look like a third grader. I mean, like, I did not try and make it sound beautiful at all. I was like, I do not want to smoke. My goal tomorrow is to not smoke. Why do I smoke? It's so gross. I hate the way I smoke. It's so bad for me. Like, blah, 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 blah. You know, like 5-word sentences. The purpose is really just to sort of like ingrain it in myself. And then I just didn't want to anymore. And so I've done this for anger too, and I think it's really helped me because then I can actually see even before I'm like getting angry. And when I don't write, it's harder. But when I do, I just think for some people it might be something really popular. But then for me, it's like the way to change. Like if there's something I really want to change, I know what I need to do. I need to like write about it every single night until I feel like I need some progress.
Okay. And then, thanks so much for coming.
Guys, we're all so good looking. So cool.
Right back at you.
And smart.